Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Alejandro Castillo. This is a new episode of the Volley Talks here in the Plus Volleyball Facebook page. This is episode 68. I'm Alejandro Castillo, broadcasting from Mexico City, the largest city in the world. Today is Sunday, July the 1st of 2020, and it's a pleasure for me to receive a great guest, an international and successful coach, Mr. Mark Lebedew from Australia, but right now he's in Poland. How are you, Mark? How is everything over there?
Hi, Alejandro. Great to be here. I'm doing very well. We have a beautiful Sunday afternoon. The sun is shining. I've just finished grilling, and now I'm ready to answer all your questions.
Okay, I hope it was a good grill.
It was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So, well, Mark, thanks a lot. Thanks for being here. I have read about you for a long time. I read your blog. You write a very interesting things. And, I know that, recently you quit Australian volleyball team last year. And right now you are in Poland, right?
Yep, that's right. I finished with the Australian team after the Olympic qualification, so in January, and since then I'm living at home in Poland. My wife is Polish, and this is where I've been working mostly in the last year. So here I am. Yeah.
Okay, and you live in the south of Poland, right?
Yep. There's in the south of Poland. The first team that I worked for in Poland was Jastrzębski Węgiel, which is very close here, and was when I was working there that I met my wife. We were in the same city, and around this area, within 100 kilometers, there are four or five plus Liga teams. So it's one of the main areas of volleyball in Poland.
Thanks, Mark. And in the last season, have you coached a team in Poland in Plus Liga, or what are the plans for the next season?
For now, I don't. The last years I worked in Jastrzębski Węgiel and also in Aileron Bertu Zawiercie in Plus Liga. At the moment, I don't have a team for next season, so I'm taking the time to study, to watch games, to do some writing, some stuff that's going on the blog, but also some other stuff that is for some projects that are coming up soon that haven't seen the light of day yet.
Perfect, Mark. Yes, I have read a lot of your articles in your blog, marklebedew.com. It's very interesting. How was the idea came to you?
Yeah, the first thing, I'm from Australia. I work with the national team at the Olympics in Sydney. I was more or less at the end of what I could do inside Australia, because we don't have a lot of volleyball. We don't have professional volleyball. So I came to Europe, hoping to find some work as a coach. Firstly, in Germany, where I had some contacts, and I was really lucky that I was able to find some work in 2002, and luckily I had some good results, some good performances, made some more contacts, and kept working in Europe since then. And around it's 10 years I've been writing the blog. So around 2010, early 2010, I was thinking about how I can help Australian coaches, especially to understand what it's like to be in Europe, because in Australia we didn't. It's a little bit different now, but we didn't really understand how the leagues worked, what the pressures, what the way that we played, the level, the media attention, and so on. So the first idea was as a conversation or a possibility to communicate directly with Australian coaches. It's funny to go back and and see some of the first things that are on the website, on the blog, are just match reports. Just I watched some matches and were writing about them. But as time went on, I really enjoy writing. I've always enjoyed writing, so I started to write some different things, some ideas I had about books that I read, and some people liked it, and they talked to some other people, and 10 years later, it's not one of the biggest blogs in the world. There are definitely some coaches who have a lot more views and so on, but the people that interact with me seem to enjoy what I write about and the way that I think about things, and I've actually met some people who are really great friends and colleagues through writing that. So it's a fantastic exercise for me.
Yes, I do agree with you. I think it's a very, very interesting blog, very, very interesting articles, and not a lot of people do that. And especially with your point of view, you told us minutes ago that in Australia, volleyball is not so big, it's not pro. You went to Europe to try in some pro level volleyball. So it's very interesting. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy reading your blog, Mark.
Thank you.
So please, Mark, tell us something about your beginnings in volleyball. We know that, it's difficult to develop volleyball in Australia. Well, I have a little idea because rugby is big over there, and cricket maybe, I don't know, surf, of course. But
Yeah.
it was your first choice, volleyball, or did you practice another sport? How did you get involved in volleyball?
I actually come from a volleyball family. My father was not a player, but he helped to establish the Australian Volleyball Federation. He was one of the founding members. He was very active in the region in South Australia where we grew up, and so I was around volleyball from before I was born even. So I think my mother was 8 months pregnant at the national championships, and so this was my first my first activities. So I was always at the matches, at the tournaments, but I was an Australian kid. I wanted to play football, not rugby. Not many people play rugby. It's actually a small sport, but I wanted to play Australian football. I wanted to play cricket. I wanted to play tennis. I never wanted to play volleyball until I was about 13 or 14. And there was a team very close to my house, and I went, and I really loved playing, more or less from the time I went to the first practice. I went, and after that, I never missed a practice. I was playing. Was a time in Australian volleyball when there were was really no sponsors, no government support. So everything that we did, we paid for. So we played for we paid to play in the national team. We paid to play every tournament that we played. And so I grew up in that period where the players really loved volleyball. So they would use all their holidays. They would work extra jobs to save money to play. And this is I guess my generation. And with the background, of course, that I had was maybe made it even a little bit more. So that was how I started. And I don't know, I never really wanted to work in any other field other than sport. I never wanted to be an accountant or anything like that. So the options were to be an administrator, to work in making programs, or to be a coach. And so I was about 21, I think, when I decided to be a coach, and then I went to university, and that's the basic part of it. Just hang on 1 second.
Is your dog or what?
No, if it was my dog, I would be less happy. It's a neighbor's dog.
Okay,
This time in
perfect.
the evening, they let the dog go outside, and they're crazy.
Okay, so don't worry. So, have you ever played in national team or in a, where there's no pro league or there's a college league in Australia? How does work this volleyball environment in Australia?
So we had the volleyball is really based in the main cities, because if you know about the geography of Australia, um, there are, I think that it's 80% of the population live in 6 cities, and each one of those is over a million inhabitants. So there are leagues in every city, and that's where we played the most of the volleyball. From there, then we played in regional, more or less city against city, some kind of competitions, but not a real league. And that was the most important competition in Australia, the regional competition, South Australia against New South Wales, against Victoria, and so on. And from there, we chose some national teams again who had to pay to go to the events, and I played some national team in that period, and I was never a great player in Australia, and Australians were not great players in the world, but I was a good player, and I could play, close to the national team level for most of my mid-20s.
All right, and well, considering the long distances in Australia, that's a difficulty, right? To play, I don't know, maybe Melbourne versus Perth team. It's kind of difficult.
It's the biggest impediment to volleyball, the development of a volleyball league, and it's difficult for all sports, and even basketball. Basketball at some time was similar level to us, but they were able to, with difficulty, find a way to make a league between the cities, and for us, we've never been able to work out a way to find someone to pay for it, basically. So, we every few years we try one way of a league, and everybody's excited for 3 years, and then they spend all their money, and we wait till the next generation of players comes and has money to waste.
Okay, Mark. And what's the place of volleyball in the sports environment in Australia? I mean, who is the biggest sport, and how does volleyball plays in this sports environment in Australia?
The biggest sport in Australia is cricket, and that's the peculiarities of Australian sport is that cricket is the only national game, and football, but or soccer, but so soccer is a lower level. The Australian football and rugby are actually played in different regions in Australia, so that Australian football is played in the south and west, and rugby and rugby league are played in the north and east. So none of them are bigger than cricket. Volleyball fits somewhere. We've had some good success, and some people like Natalie Cook and Kerry Pothurst, who won Olympic gold medals,
Yes.
are well known. They're not sort of popular or stop in the street famous, but they're well known, and volleyball is known, but it's not really comparable to anywhere else.
And what about volleyball, indoor volleyball versus beach volleyball? It's bigger beach volleyball considering your coasts.
It's we didn't start to play beach volleyball until until the Europeans, basically, the same time when the Americans popularized volleyball, when they became the best team in the world, and beach volleyball started to become known, we started to play. So so when I was in my 20s, in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, we started to play something, but it's the same as indoor volleyball. It's never been able to have really good traction for a long period of time. So we have a tour for a few years. We had a really, really strong tour for 2 or 3 years, and then one sponsor pulled out, and it's like that. So if you talk to just a person on the street, they would probably think of beach volleyball before indoor volleyball, but it's not like one's very famous and one's not famous. It's like one's not famous and one's also not famous.
Yes, I can imagine, Mark. And what do you think was the impact of the Sydney Olympics for Australian volleyball? It was positive or was negative, or what do you think?
In the short term, it was really positive, and especially for Natalie and Kerry, who won the gold medal. So they still have a presence in Australian culture and society, because based on that medal. In terms of the sport, it hasn't really had any effect. The climate for government funding is based almost 100% on the ability to win a medal at the Olympics, and so we did well at the Olympics. The men's team, for example, we made the quarterfinals. We had a good team, but we've never been able to turn that into more players or more sponsors or whatever. So, and at the time of the Olympics, we had played in World League the year before in 1999, and as happened in many places, the costs associated with World League meant the federation went bankrupt or almost bankrupt. So we played in the Olympics, but we didn't have the resources to do anything after that.
Oh. And Mark, how difficult is to play in the Asian Volleyball Confederation? I mean, probably for the best, you have to travel for New Zealand, but in the other hand, you have to travel to China, Indonesia, Japan. It's kind of difficult, right?
It's a different. It's different. I'm not sure that it's not good or bad or something. I guess the Australian cities and so on are really similar to Europe and America, and so we have a way of living, some general standards of what we do, that, and it's easy for an Australian to travel in America, to travel in Europe for those reasons, and when we travel in Asia, and Asia is really big and really diverse. So we go from we have on the west we have Iran, and close to Iran we have Saudi Arabia, and you often think of those countries as being really similar, but they're not at all similar. And then you go a little bit further south and you have India and Pakistan, and then you go east, and everywhere you go, the culture and the society and the cities are really different, and so that part of it's difficult. The volleyball is really interesting because it's every region within Asia plays in a slightly different way. So you can you play against teams from Indonesia and Philippines, for example, who are not very big, but they're really fast and they play a lot of combinations and things that you never see more or less anymore. And you go to Iran, and Iran play, they're one of the top 10 teams in the world, so they play a really European way of playing, and so the travel and the competition and the opponents that we play against are really diverse, and for that reason, it's a really interesting challenge.
Okay, Mark, thanks. And you started coaching in Australia, and what happened then? You went to Europe for Germany. I think it was your first country, Germany,
Yeah.
Poland. Can you share with us something about that, about your transition from Australia to Europe?
I was from Australia. I've been to the Olympics, so we were in the quarterfinal. I was the assistant coach of that team, and I had some idea that volleyball is really big, and I will flash my CV and someone will give me a job. And I had one contact who sent out 150 emails and had one reply, and that was for a junior team. And so I was lucky, so I ended up getting this job with a junior team in Wuppertal in Germany, and could build something from there once I was in a team. So, but as an Australian at that time, there were only 3 or 4 players who were playing in Europe. Actually, maybe more, maybe 8 or 10 that were playing in Europe, and no coaches had worked there, and it was a real the rhythm of playing and training and preparing for a weekly competition is really unusual in Australia. We don't have that. What we do in Australia is prepare to play in tournaments, and the national team was the same. We prepared for 2 months and played one tournament. So the weekly practice, prepare, play, review, practice, prepare, play, that part was interesting, was different and challenging. The level of attention was a big difference. In Australia, I make the joke that even my mother doesn't really care about the result. And I remember the first match that I played, I was coaching the juniors in 4th division, and we lost the first match of the season. I came to the club on Monday, and the sport director starts to talk to me. What the hell is that? You lose this, and that was the first time that ever happened to me in my life. So, those parts of it were. I had to learn a different way of thinking about volleyball, preparing about it. You have to train a different way. So, it was an interesting challenge, and I'm really happy that I did it and was able to do it.
And how much time did you spend in Germany?
So it's a bit altogether. I spent 10 seasons in Germany, not all in a row. I was in Wuppertal for 3 years, and then in Belgium, Italy, Poland. Then I went back to Germany again as a head coach for another 7 years in Bamberg and in Berlin. So 10 years. I'm a little bit like a German.
With the recycling volleys, right? They are a big team in Germany.
Yes, that was the biggest German club that I was with, and when I went there, it was SCC Berlin, and they played in a stadium with 1,000 spectators, and most of the matches were 300 or 400 people. But we had a really good season. The club hadn't been challenging for the championship for a few years. The first year we made the final, And there was a sponsor that came on board, and or that wanted to increase their commitment. The president of the club wanted to invest in some bigger project, also with his own money. And because of all of those things together, including the success on the court, we changed the name, we moved to the big stadium in the Schmelinghalle, and even the first couple of years we won the championship, but we weren't ever the favourites really to win. It was still Friedrichshafen was the biggest club, and but now it's 10 and 12 years later, that's changed.
And how was for a kid from Australia, where volleyball is not so big, go to Europe and at what time play the SEV Champions League?
It's it's one of those things that even now I have to pinch myself, as they say, because before me there were no Australian coaches working in Europe, and in Australia we didn't trust Australian coaches. So to have been able to come here and build a career and a name, and to be a part of those events, Champions League for me is it's my favorite tournament to play, and it's my favorite event to play, and even more than the national team events. So right now I get to compete against the people who I used to watch on video when I was a kid, who I never even dreamed about watching live, because we never, when Gardini played for Italy, it wasn't even on TV. I had a video cassette that was sent to me, arrived 3 months later, and now I compete against him and all the players of his generation. So for an Australian, it's still something I think about, and think it's an amazing journey.
Great. I also think so, Mark. And what happened next? You moved to a few other countries, and how was growing your career at that time?
Yeah, it's not an easy. It's not easy to describe. Really, I got in any kind of career, or any kind of life, there's a lot of luck. There's a lot of coincidence. There's a lot of times that you are in the right place at the right time. So in Germany, I was able to, in Wuppertal, to stay for a few years with some good results. So I started to build a name, and then I could move on to a team in Belgium. Then I had, as time goes on, more contacts. So it was a good plan for me, or a good opportunity for me, to go to bigger leagues like Poland and Italy as an assistant, which I did with Stella De Rocca and Roberto Santilli, and every time gaining some experience, gaining knowledge, and building the name, which takes a long time. And eventually there was a moment when I could come back to Germany again, and which led to taking the team in Berlin, and everything that happened afterwards.
And tell us something. It is real that the Plus Liga the fans are really crazy. There are huge crowds in Poland for volleyball.
This is Poland. I haven't been in every volleyball country, but for me, Poland is the country that volleyball is the most important. So by that I mean that in volleyball is a culturally significant sport in Poland. It's not the most popular, it's still football, but it really is close to basketball and the other teams. And the national team is important in society. The national team players and the professional players are known everywhere, not just in the stadiums. And so volleyball is an important sport in Poland. The fans are really good. It's not full stadiums everywhere, but it's it's a minimum 1,000, 1,500 people, and the bigger clubs, they play in so actually some really nice gyms that are 3 or 4, maybe 5,000 spectators, and these ones are nearly full most of the time. So it's a really great environment to play. All or nearly all the matches are on TV. So there are, there's TV at every game. There's journalists, and it's I think that the Plus Liga is the one of the most important leagues. In Italy, I also had the chance to work, and it's a little bit different for volleyball. Volleyball's not so important in Italy. Italy is really important place for volleyball. It's the place where all of the volleyball people are. But if you go to Italy and take the sports newspaper, the Gazzetta dello Sport, and you are turning the pages for a long time before you find volleyball. In Poland, it's on the front page of the main newspapers.
Well, but all of we think that Italy is one of the strongest leagues in volleyball in the world.
Italy is the strongest league, and now I'm not so sure. But last season, it was again. It has built up the salaries and the budget, so it's the place that most players want to go. But in Italian culture, volleyball is not so important. Outside volleyball, in volleyball, Italy is the most important.
Yeah. Well, the last pro season you coached in Poland, right, with Aluron. How was that experience?
Yes. I was in Aluron for 2 seasons. The first season, when I joined the club, it was the second season since they came from the lower division, and they were 10th or 11th the season before. In my first season, we made the semi-finals of the league. We were ahead in the semi-final with a chance to make the finals, but missed out. The second season was more difficult, and a lot of everything goes right in one season, and in the second it doesn't go right. So we finished 10th, I think, again.
Okay, and at the same time, you spend the time with the national team of Australia, right? You went back to Australia for the national team.
Yeah, the opportunity came to coach the Australian team, which is something that really I wanted to do since I was a kid. Since I was a coach, at least I wanted to coach the team. It's the possibilities in Australia, the budgetary constraints and so on are there. So it's not possible to have a full-time coach. So the option that they have is to have a club coach who also works in the summer. So I did that for 3 years, and it was an amazing experience, amazing journey. And with the national team, we did some really great things. I think how we built the team, the results that we had until the qualification tournament. But the working as a national team coach and a club coach together is really demanding, and I have to say that by the end of that period, I was ready for a break. And obviously the situation is not the perfect way, but for me to not leave the house for 3 months was not difficult.
And
Even if
well,
I'm not allowed,
sorry, I didn't hear.
even if I'm not allowed to leave the house, for me, I would have been in the house anyway.
Okay, great. Mark, what do you think we have to do in countries like Australia, like Mexico, where volleyball is not so big? Well, we in Mexico had the great opportunity to went to last Olympics in Rio. We
Mhm.
qualified with the men's team, but honestly, it's not a big sport. And I think, as the same as you can think, volleyball is the greatest sports in the world, and it's a very spectacular game. What do you think we have to do to grow the game in our countries?
It's not an easy question to answer, especially because every country is a little bit different. So the you know every country has different facilities and a different cultural background, and so the answer is not the same everywhere. Overall, in the world, and I think this holds for small areas, large areas, federations, FIVB. I think we have to change the way that we think about promoting the game, and even change the way we think about the game. And I think that even volleyball people, even a lot of people who say they are volleyball people, they don't really understand how amazing the game is. And I don't think that we do a good job of selling what it is that we can see on the court. And the part of it is TV commentary. Part of it is to have an analyst who is explaining. Part of it is to have a culture of media. Part of it is volleyballers to feel that they are part of something important. And the one, it's a kind of stupid thing, but I wear a suit for the game whenever I can wear a suit for the game. And the reason is not because it's comfortable or I hate the suit. I never wear it. I never wear a tie for anything. Even for my own wedding, I don't wear a tie. But for me, it's important to show the people there that I am serious, that volleyball is serious, that I am serious about being a coach. And this is, for me, this is part of it. You would never see Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson or Jurgen Klopp or Jose Mourinho walk onto the court in jeans and a t-shirt with a hat on or anything. They are serious about what they do, and a lot of the time, volleyball coaches and people involved are not as serious. And this is part of the mentality that we have about ourselves. And we can't expect Coca-Cola to give us $100 million if we think that we are not worth $100 million. So this is how we think about ourselves is a big part of it. And educating people into how amazing the game is, what it is that they're seeing, how difficult it is. These are things that I would like to see a lot more of.
Well, I 100% do agree with you. We, the people of volleyball, have the responsibility to grow the game.
Hashtag grow the game.
Yeah, there will not come the basketball people or the soccer people or the rugby people to do the job. We, the volleyball people, have to do it. Has to.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree.
Mark, Please tell us a little more about your blog. It's very interesting. You write there about a lot of topics, a lot of issues. So can you tell us a little more about how often do you write, or what are your favorite issues to write?
Oof. The first thing is that I like writing. So the 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 act of writing for me is something that I enjoy doing, and volleyball is the topic that I think about the most. So there's a fit there. Um, I find that the act of writing really helps me to clear my thoughts. So uh, if you actually want to make an argument, um, then writing it and condensing the thoughts and changing it around is a really good way for me, the way my brain works, for me to understand the game better and what I'm trying to do. My goal is always to make volleyball better. So there's a lot of things that are there that I'm just exploring, or I just want to have a conversation, or I'm just seeing what people think. So a big part of it is that's one of the things that I write about. Um, I think that the history of volleyball is something that we don't pay attention to, and this is part of taking ourselves seriously. Every football fan knows exactly how many games that every player played for the national team, and the one time that Mexico won against Brazil, or everybody knows this. And in volleyball, nobody knows any of these stories. I had so many times that I was working with Canadian players or American players, and I know more about the history of volleyball in their country than they do from 5 years ago. So I write some things about history that come across. In this time, I've been watching some old games for fun, and it's really valuable for me watching how the game really changed. So I'm writing about those things. Some statistical. I am following statistics of games and leagues and trying to, like I said, trying to understand everything a little bit better. I write about that. I have one series on tips for coaches, the tips for that are not to do with techniques and tactics, but just about coaching. And I have a series of that on the blog with, I think there are 80 something tips there, and probably I will make a book of that soon. So that's a big part of it. So I don't write any regular time. I write when I have an idea that I need to get from my head somewhere out of my head. So sometimes I can write 3 things in one day, sometimes maybe nothing for a couple of weeks. So you have to check back all the time or subscribe.
Oh yes, yes, I'm subscribed. I really love the things you write, because it's part of growing the game. To spread the knowledge, to 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 analyze the game. I think the game has been changed a lot in especially in recent years, but in the at the bottom line, it's the same game we have been playing for the last 100 years. I mean, 6 versus 6, a net
Yeah.
between them, and 3 touches to throw the ball to the other side, right?
The basics of the game are the same as the basics of football and basketball, and um, but there's a lot of things you can do inside those basic outlines.
Yes, please, guys, go to marklebedew.com.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Mark, um, the volleyball has evolved a lot in the last 20, 30 years. what do you think is coming for volleyball in the next years? How do you see this future of volleyball?
Uh, it's difficult. It's difficult to say because part of it depends on coaches. Part of it depends on players. I think that a lot of developments in the game happen. A lot of developments in the game happen because of coaches having different ideas about training, about tactics. This is one part of it, but I think there are other developments that happen because some individual player comes to the game who does things differently, who has some different ideas about the skills. The example about this for me is with Engapet, who I think, and exactly what comes from where, but I think that the way that he plays the game has had a really big impact on all of world volleyball. So his way of thinking about the game has influenced world volleyball in the last 10 years as much as any coach. So what's going to happen is some kind of conflict between what players want, what coaches want. I think what we can see is faster game, is the more aggressive game. This is what we are seeing in men's volleyball now. I can imagine that we can see some more complexity or some more flexibility in some tactical parts, which means less specialization. So I think that we can see some of those things in the next 5 or 10 years. Otherwise, players will get faster. They will get better at spiking. They will get better at serving, and the game will keep evolving there. One thing, though, that does also change the game is the rules, and FIVB is always thinking about some ways to change the game, which we've seen a lot over the years with different ways to try to make the rallies longer. And I don't know of anything that FIVB is planning in the near future, but anything that they do can have a big impact on the game as well. So so players, coaches, and FIVB can all be part of whatever it is we see in 10 years' time.
Mark, if it could depend on you, which rule do you change? Would you change?
There are two things, and one is the first idea is that that volleyball, the rallies are too short, that we don't see enough volleyball. This is the idea that I've been in volleyball for 50 years, and this idea has been in volleyball for 70 years. So this never changes. There is always this discussion. There are one thing is about the serve. In men's volleyball, there is a big discussion about the serve, but I don't see a solution to this, because if you make the serve easier, then you make reception easy, and every rally is finished on the first action. So, nothing really changes. Then volleyball is boring. It's boring because the same thing happens all the time. So I don't think there's a solution for this. One thing that I think that can be done really easily is the rotational order that we have. if you watch the games, they don't enforce the rules for the rotational order. So and I think that if they enforce the rules as they are written without changing anything, then they can make a big change to the game and make the rallies longer without changing anything else. So I wrote about this one once.
Okay, great, Mark. Thanks for sharing.
The other one, and there's one other one, and the other one I know that they've been talking about for a long time, because Doug Beal, I know, has been part of this conversation, but the other one is that the players can play any ball they can reach above the net. So there is no, if the ball is close to the net, then you can reach as far as you want and play it before the setter. That this will also keep the reception away from the net, and will make the game more difficult. I think that would also have a positive effect.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Mark. And let's talk a little about the libero. The libero player, as you know, was invented thinking in defensive responsibilities. But I think that this position has evolved a lot, and today in today's volleyball, it has become a very powerful offensive tool, because all the offensive schemes and tactics has changed with the introduction of libero. What do you think?
I agree completely, and I wrote about this idea also, how the libero really changed the game. What I think is that over time, so it took maybe 10 years, but the first thing the libero did was made the offense better, because the coaches said, I can take away the bad receiver. Now I have 3 receivers and the offense is better. But then when the development of players caught up with the rules, so in the first 10 years of the libero, it was the 5th receiver who, the last receiver who didn't make the team became the libero. But then at the same time, they started to train the 10-year-olds as liberos, and then you have the next generation of players who only play libero for their whole lives. And so they are also better at defense, but when you start to prepare with the libero always, then the middle blocker, because we always use the middle blocker for the libero, the middle blocker never has to defend. So now, at the same time that the libero was getting smaller because he was being a specialized libero, the middles were also getting bigger because they only had to be middles. So the block is better, and now, because the block is better, the defense is better. So it made the defense better, but it took 15 years after the rule.
Yes, I do agree with you. I had a few comments, Mark. My friend Octavio Medina, a Mexican but now living in Seattle, Washington, says, "What do you think about rising the net 10 or 15 centimeters?"
I don't think that will change anything really. It will mean that you need to have bigger players. So because the higher the net, the bigger the players have to be. Can make the serve. It can make the serve a little bit easier and make attacking a little bit harder. So I don't think that so much will change, except that the players will get bigger. And one of the things that people don't want is to have bigger players.
All right, perfect. And what do you think about having more substitutions of players per set?
this is this is an interesting idea. So I was watching a couple of days ago a documentary about the International Volleyball Association. Do you know this? This was a competition league in the United States in the 70s, and they play without rotation. So the players were fixed, and they had women and men playing together. But if you have unlimited substitutions, then you might as well have no rotation. So then you have the same kind of game. So I like the rotation. I like that in volleyball you have to have this balance. You have to find a way to organize yourself around your weak points and strong points. So I would not like to see that. I would like to see the substitution stay the same and the rotation stay the same. I wouldn't quit volleyball if it changed. I don't think it's that important, but personally, I would prefer to see that part of the game stay the same.
All right, thanks. We have two comments from Adam Ewart. He's your friend. It's from Australia.
Yep.
Adam Ewart says, "Love the sweet comment."
Thanks, Adam.
And Adam Ewart also says, "It would be nice to have a computer system that alerts the ref to errors in rotations."
There is a small can of worms, of course, because if you have the challenge system, then maybe you have to use the challenge for the rotation. But I think that it's easier to judge than it would be easier to judge than it is now, because now there is the rule and the understanding of how we play the game, the convention. So everybody plays the game a certain way, even if it's not the rules. So in football, soccer, for example, when the player falls over and he is not really injured, but he is falling over, the other team kicks the ball out so that the player who is not injured can be treated. So there is no reason for this, but this is the way that they play together. In volleyball, we play together with the idea that you can be this far out of rotation, but what is this far? So the referees have to decide what is too far, what is okay. And sometimes if you make the rule black and white, it's easier to follow. So for me, I think it would be easier for referees. Of course, the players would argue like lunatics for 2 weeks, and then when they find nothing can happen, they will get on and play the game.
Yes, of course. Octavio Medina says, "Come to Mexico, Mark, for a course."
I am free in this moment, so I'm happy for any invitations. As long as your country is open and my country is open, we can work something out.
Okay, yes, we can make it work, of course. Other question, no. Mark, which players in the past, when you were young, did you like the most? And also, right now, in current time, which players do you like to watch play at the highest level?
When I was first interested in volleyball, my favorite players were the Russian players, Savin and Zaitsev, but I never saw them play. So my father had the magazines and I saw the photos, in the red uniforms and Savin with the mustache, and he looks like he can kill you by looking at you. So he was my favorite player, even if I never saw him play. When I started to see some of these players on the videos that arrived in Australia 3 months after the matches played. I really enjoyed watching some guys like Kach Kirai, some Brazilians. Del Zotto was one of my favorites. Franco Bertoli, because I had a lot of videos from Italy. These were the main guys around that time. The Swedish guy Gustafsson, who I wrote about a few days ago, he was one of the first players that I saw in real life. So those were the ones who were my favorite players that I was watching on the videos, and I said, okay, I will try to do like this. I will try to do like that. Now there are which players I like to. There are lots of players that I like to watch, but really I like to watch just volleyball, just good teams play. I like the team part of the game, so I like teams that are working well together. When the French team was playing really well, I love to watch this team play because how they work together, because how they solve problems together, and you can really see when 6 players are thinking the same way on the court. So this kind of volleyball from France from 2013, 14, something like this. Now, the last season, the Champions League final, Civitanova was one team that was really playing like that, with some great players, but everybody, with Bruno playing, everybody thinking in the same way and solving problems in the same way. So I probably prefer to watch the good teams playing than any one player.
Yeah, and Civitanova with a lot of Cuban players.
Yeah, they have I don't know. Juantorena is Italian and Leal is...
He's Cuban-born. Juantorena is
Yeah,
Cuban-born, now playing for Italy. Joandre Leal is Cuban-born, but now playing for Brazil. And Robert Landisimon, Cuban and playing for Cuba.
Yeah. Oh, of course, I was joking, but yes, those guys are playing really well, and one guy that I really like is Juantorena. I had the chance to see him and also to play against him in the last couple of years, and he's one player that the more I watch him, the more I appreciate all of the things that he does, and what a great player he is, and how important he is for Italy. He is the I don't want to say that he is 80% of the team, but he's. We played the Olympic qualification against them, and really he was the guy. He is such a great player and such a great personality, and that's one guy I enjoy more and more over the years.
Yes, of course. Juantorena is a great player. And Mark, please share something about your influences as a coach, or maybe your mentors or the coaches you like the most, or have you learned the most in the recent years?
I've been, since I became a coach, or had the idea to be a coach, I was studying and reading about a lot of different coaches in a lot of different sports. So one coach that was really influential to me, and also because my father knew him, and is Platonov, the Russian coach. And my father also translated one of his books into English, which was really amazing, because in volleyball we don't have a literature, we don't have books that we can read, about different players, different coaches. So to have the chance to read in English about a coach like Platonov is great. And so he's one. From other sports is Phil Jackson was the NBA coach, is one that I read a lot about, and his way of thinking and working with the team is really influential. And otherwise, it's a lot of different coaches that I admire and follow and take some pieces of. In straight volleyball, guys, there were coaches who helped me a lot with Stelio De Rocco and Roberto Santilli, who helped me by giving me jobs and taking me as an assistant. Sometimes when I wasn't really ready to be working at that level, but they trusted me and gave me opportunities, and they could be considered mentors.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Talking about international Australian players, I think that the most notable in the recent years has been Thomas Edgar, right? How many other Australian players are playing overseas?
It varies from year to year and with men and women, but with the years that I was working with the national team, more or less 20 players were playing in Europe or outside Australia in professional clubs. There are also a lot of Australians in college teams in Canada, for example, especially in Canada, because we have a similar system. So there's a opportunity for Australian players to go to Canada quite easily. So we can have sort of between 15 and 20 players playing at different levels, and also playing in big leagues. So Tom obviously is the most famous Australian, I guess, at the moment. But in the last years, we've had Luke Perry, who's, for me, I think he's one of the best 3 liberos in the world. For me, there's no question about this. And he's playing in Poland and in Berlin. And Paul Carroll, who was, in Berlin playing Final Fours and winning, I think he won 7 championships in Berlin. And, these are some of the other great Australian players who are well known.
Okay, Octavio Medina, again, my friend from Mexico, says, in actual times, who do you consider are the player, female or male, to follow in the next 1 or 2 years?
That's a really good question. I haven't seen every player. I don't have the exact sort of input on every player, but the young generation, or the youngest generation of the Polish team, who were world champions, these guys are really interesting guys. So there are 3 of them more or less in the national senior team already, which is Bartosz Kwolek, Kuba Kokonowski, and Tomek Fornal. I think that these are guys that can be really big, important players in the next few years. And there are some couple of young guys from Czech Republic, Javoronok, I think his name is, for example, who's playing in Italian league, and one Ukrainian player whose name I don't remember. So, these are the main players that come to my mind anyway.
Okay, great, Mark. Thinking in next year Olympics in Tokyo 2021, Which team do you like to make the medals? And especially, which team do you think could be the black horse of the competition?
Um, I don't know what's going to be in 2021, so it's more than a year away. So it can depend on on how the next season goes, if we have a full season or not. But imagining that everything goes more or less normal from here, which is um, not sure, but we can hope. Uh, I think probably the number one team is Poland. Not for any big reason except that they have a good team, and with Leon, maybe Leon is the best player in the world right now. So um, he is or that is the favorite, I think. But I think that a lot of the teams are at a really similar level, and it can depend on some very small things. So the United States, they have their best 7 or 8 players are really strong. If Sander is close to 100% after his shoulder problem, because that makes a big difference. Brazil actually have some really interesting young players I should think about in the last question. So the new opposite they have, Alan, I think, is he's a really good player. He is another one. He's another one to watch, and they have great players. So Russia, they with Samuel Boy working for another year with them to bring in the younger players. So he's been working in the club team with Kobza and Poltaev, and will be Kliuka also. And those are, and the young middle blockers they have. Now that I should have thought about this question longer, but one of the middles from Russia, Yakov Lev, is really, really good. I really, really like this guy, and I think he will be one of the best 3 or 4 middles in the world. So they have another year to develop, so that could help the Russians. Italy depends all on Guantarena if he is still healthy in 1 more year. So they are the main ones. Who have I forgotten?
And what about a black horse in the competition?
Just because I haven't mentioned them, and maybe France. France still has. They still have Engapet. They have the couple of young opposites. So the young opposite who played in the qualification, Patry, it's only 22 and 23, so he will have another year. And they have actually receivers. They have a lot of good receivers. If they can maybe choose one and stick with him for a few months or for 1 year, they could still they still have this way of playing that the other teams don't. So they could be a good dark horse.
Do you think Iran can make finally a good tournament next year? It's always difficult.
What does it mean, a good tournament? Can they win a medal? I don't think
Yeah,
they can win a medal, but
yeah, win a medal.
no, I think they are a very good team, but it's difficult to say that they are better than the teams that I mentioned. So Poland, USA, Brazil, Russia, France, I don't think they are better than these teams. So at the Olympics, to win a medal, you have to win 4 matches. So I think they can win. Depends when you win them. So they could win. be close to a medal, but I think they are half a level below these other teams.
Yes. I think so too. Um, Mark, it has been really a pleasure to talk with you with a great mind, a great thinker of volleyball. I am really excited about that. I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
about the time, sharing your thoughts, sharing your philosophy of volleyball. I'm really glad. Um, uh, I hope you can share with us a final thoughts, a final words for the people who was watching us and hearing us, listening us.
Ooh. I have maybe two things that I like to say. One is, and especially if you're a coach, is to question everything. So whatever something tells you, especially when someone says you have to do something one way, you have to ask, why do you have to do it this way? Maybe there's a reason, but a lot of the times there's not, and it will certainly confuse a lot of people too. And the second one is for all of us in volleyball, not just coaches, but fans and spectators and supporters, to do our best to make volleyball a little bit better every day. And if we can make volleyball a little bit better, we can make the game on the court a little bit better. If we can educate people about how beautiful our game is, if we can share some histories and some stories, then we make the game better. And as the game gets a little bit better, we have more TV, we have more sponsors, and we can continue to live the great lives that volleyball gives us.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree with you. Volleyball is the most beautiful game in the world. We love volleyball. We hope to go back to volleyball as soon as possible, but it depends of a lot of things, not only on wishes. But yeah, I think all of we in our different perspectives, we have to do all the possible to grow the game, to make a volleyball better, to have more sponsors, to have more TV, to have more fans in the arenas, in the stadiums. And well, I think you are doing it very well. And well, this project, Volley Talks, is my little contribution to achieve that goal to grow the game.
And and thanks to you for doing exactly what I said, for doing something to make the game a little bit better, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be a part of it.
No, thanks a lot, Mark. I hope to see you pretty soon in a volleyball court. It would be great that we can meet in a volleyball court. By now, we have to stay safe, to stay in house, and keep fighting this pandemic.
That's our first job.
Okay, Mark Lebedew, thanks a lot for being here in Volley Talks. It has been a pleasure for me, and thanks to all the people who watched this streaming. Later at 6 p.m. Mexico and 2 p.m. 2 a.m. sorry in Poland, we will have a more public coach from Penn State Nittany Lions in NCAA volleyball.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great personality, the same as you. And well, thanks for being here, Mark. I send you a virtual hug by now to sorry Poland.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Mark.
See you later. Ciao.